Thank you for joining XR, which is India's first AR/VR/MR podcast. Today I have with me Ashwin Jaishanker, who is the CEO of Autovrse. So thank you, Ashwin. It's a pleasure to have you on XR podcast. What drove you into getting into this technology? Why do you think this is such an exciting field? And how and when did you start Autovrse?
Firstly, thanks a lot, Eddie, for having me on the podcast. I enjoyed Automotive VR around 2015. I think around summer of 2015 was when I was just sort of finishing college. I was interning at Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics with DRDO, right? And just trying to figure out what I'm doing next. So I used to go to a few hackathons with just a group of friends from college, right? And there was this particular hackathon called the NASA Space Apps Hackathon. NASA just conducts like a hackathon which has centers across the world, and Bangalore was the center at that point. And we just on a whim, we decided that we signed up for it. We were planning on going, and a week or so prior to that, I'd heard of virtual reality. The Google Cardboard was very popular then, and it was around 300 rupees that you could just order off Amazon, 350 rupees. So I just bought one, and we weren't planning on building anything in VR for it, but we just, coincidentally on the day of the hackathon, the Google Cardboard got delivered. And so we turned up at the hackathon place. We just tried on the Google Cardboard. So it was a cardboard facility where you slip your phone into, right? And obviously now it's not a great experience at all. But at that point in 2015, we tried it, and it blew our minds, right? Like we just really liked it, and we were like, it's okay. We just, like, over the course of this hackathon, the 2-day hackathon, we're just going to build something for this. So NASA, basically what they do is the Curiosity rover that they have on Mars, every day, or rather every Mars day, which is a soil, so it sends back photos, right? And there are 360-degree photos that it sends back as well. And NASA actually has an open API where you can download these photos. And so we sort of built an app where you could, we basically took these 360 photos that the Curiosity rover was sending back, put it in virtual reality. And so when you wore it, you would actually feel like you are riding that Curiosity rover across like the Martian surface as it is traveling, like day by day, right? And so we called it Marvin, Marvin the Martian tour guide, or something like that. But more importantly, I think there were a few extremely high resolution images where when you put it, you just look like you wore it and you just looked up at the Milky Way, and like it just looked fantastic. It felt like you were on Mars. And so that was just so exciting. And I think most of the people who you might have met who are working in this field have probably come up with just a similar moment where they experience it for the first time, and they're just like, oh, I need to work in this space. You don't really, and that's kind of like the beauty of the medium, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There are a lot of drawbacks, a lot of like constraints, a lot of obstacles to get through, but that feeling you get when you just experience it for the first time, and consequently, obviously, something that over the last 5 years, as we've demoed to like thousands of people, that's what keeps you going. Like when they put on the headset, that moment of wonder, the wow they feel, and then once they take it off, just how their mind is racing with the possibilities of what this can do for them. That's fundamentally what got us into this. Early 2016ish, in January, where we met one of my friends. He worked at Tata Motors, and he was working very closely with their design team, right? And these automotive designers, we found a use case where virtual reality would help make their lives extremely easy. And that's sort of where Autovrse got started. We just, so to get into that a little further, basically how the automotive design process works is, so these designers would first just make these cool sketches. I don't know if you've seen these concept cars, right, which gets released at the Auto Expo, these super sleek cars, which never make it to the real world, but they just look very cool. So every car, like even your Indica and everything, started off with such a cool design. And so this was the team that is responsible for creating these designs. So their process is typically they'd make sketches, then they'd use a tool, some Autodesk tool typically, to create like a 3D model of that. But then when you're showing it to senior management, they wouldn't really show they wouldn't show the design like as a 3D model on a 2D screen, because it's not really easy for a layman to understand how that is. You don't really understand how big the car is, what it feels like to sit in the steering wheel, things like that. So when they have these design reviews, what they would do is make a clay model of the car, like a life-size clay model, or some will be like 25% scale, 50% scale, etc. And this is a very time-consuming process. Takes anywhere between a month to 3 months to manufacture each of these models, and also, I mean, lots of man hours that go into it, right? And the whole design process, as a result, the iterations are quite slow. So with virtual reality, what you could do was take these 3D models, drag and drop it. I mean, what we wanted to build was a tool where you could just drag and drop this, and then put on the headset. You see the car in front of you. You can walk around it. You can open the door. And now, because it's virtual reality, it doesn't need to look like clay anymore. You can make it look realistic, like see it in all different colors, different types of paints inside of the car, like inside the car, different textures with seats. All these you could do. You could also see it in different environments, right? On the beach, in the hills, in a city, whatever it is. And again, the next thing that it unlocks for you is also collaborating across countries. So Tata, in this case, had offices in Pune, in Italy, and in England. And they actually used to fly down these life-size clay models from one place to another, to get to work with the designers. But now with virtual reality, one person there wears a headset, one person in Pune wears a headset, one person in England wears a headset. All of a sudden, they're in the same virtual space, and they can walk around the same design and discuss it. So a virtual reality design review tool was what we set out to build. And that's sort of where Autovrse began. Initially, we just started by building like a few, like a beta prototypes. We were still all working at our day jobs and just doing this in the night part time. But we had sort of set ourselves a goal that in 100 days we will build a beta that we will get buy-in from the designers we knew at Tata. And I mean, that went pretty well. They really liked the product, and that's when we sort of quit full time and decided to start Autovrse.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah. So this augmented reality, virtual reality, it can transform so many industries. It's not funny. We are just at the cusp of kind of figuring out problems that could be solved with this technology. Like you said, I mean, right now, I think besides you guys, there are these big automobile companies which are actually leveraging virtual reality for collaboration and design across the world, right from Ford, Chevrolet, and there's so many other companies. You also pointed out that when you first discovered virtual reality, that whole experience, it's only when you experience this technology is when you're convinced about it. No matter how much we talk about it, there are places where I've gone, spoken universities and conferences, and I paint the picture of what the world will look like in another few years. But it's only when they actually put the headset and experience it themselves, that's when they understand that, oh, wow, this is what this guy was talking about. Yeah. So that how transformational this technology is. Like you, my journey began a little late. I got into virtual reality in 2016. We built our own 16 cam VR rig, and we thought that we would take the product to the market, but we didn't have neither the resources, neither the funding, and neither was the ecosystem ready at this point in time. But because of COVID, things have changed. Now suddenly everybody is talking about this technology, and I think in another 5-10 years the world and India is going to look completely different because all of these technologies which is converging together. So now I think it's no longer just augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, or 5G, or AI, or IoT, blockchain. Somehow all of these technologies are converging together, and it's going to create huge it's going to open up huge economical benefits for all industry verticals.
Yeah.
As somebody who's a startup who's vested in this space, I see you that you have taken smart decisions of pivoting from automobile design to where you are. You're doing so many other things. So what is the role that COVID has played in accelerating all of these technologies, and what would be your message to entrepreneurs and enterprises out there playing a wait and watch game? Should they enter into the game right now and start leveraging all of these technologies?
Okay. So, yeah, first, I think to address what you were saying at the beginning about how you need to experience VR to really understand what it is. I think that's been one of the um, main obstacles that VR has faced regarding its. I mean, just people. It's not easy to communicate what VR is to people with just words or even videos, right? A screen recording of what you're seeing in VR is a very poor. Um, once people see a video of a VR experience, they think they know what it's about, but it's entirely different when you actually wear the headset. And I think that's something which has hurt VR's growth, right? Because a lot of people, I mean, there are a lot of people who are cynical and like who are skeptical about what VR can actually do. That it's just a passing fad. That we had a similar period in the 90s when VR was everywhere, like VR was being talked about everywhere, and like this is just another false one. But I think this is one of the main reasons why is because it's not easy for someone to get excited by VR by just without actually trying it. And there are actual like there are only so few high quality VR headsets out there in the world right now. Like even if you ignore the Google Cardboard, right? That I think is not true VR. Sure, it can excite a few people, and it did excite like a whole generation of people in 20. I mean, in from your 2013 to 2015 kind of thing. But that's because we all knew the Oculus Rift, the HTC Vive was coming in 2016, where you would have like a proper virtual reality headset where you could actually walk around in a 3D world. And you could like interact with 3D objects. It wouldn't just be sort of like seated in one place with sort of just being in a giant sphere without any sense of scale or presence, right? That's what the old headsets are. The problem is that even right now today, there are maybe around 15 million, maybe 15 to 20 million at most headsets out there, like VR headsets out there in the world as a whole, right? And so not many people have actually experienced the proper VR experience for themselves. Not enough people, I'd say, and that number is always going to be capped by by this small VR market size now. It's growing at a steady pace, but nowhere near the kind of explosion that we saw with the smartphone industry, let's say, which is what people are comparing VR to. And on the other hand, taking augmented reality is something which translates very well into video, right? If you've seen the Microsoft HoloLens advertisements, AR almost looks better in a video recording of it than in the actual device, because I know if you've seen the HoloLens videos which have which advertise the NFL, right? So I think Microsoft signed up an agreement with the NFL to have the HoloLens, and so they shot this very high production quality ad with VFX and everything. And what it makes it seem like is that you could wear a headset, you're looking at an NFL match on the TV, and the player sort of like every time maybe like some player is focused on, his character will walk out of the screen. On the table in front of you, you can see the field from a top view and all the players running around. And this looks very cool, but when you wear a AR headset, that's not what's happening right now at all. Your field of view is very small. So even if it's capable, I mean, what you see is like basically, I think the metric is something like a 35-inch TV placed 4 feet away from your face, is where you see this magic happening, but that's just a little window, not all around you. And so I think AR had the opposite, like head-mounted AR had the opposite problem, where the videos look great, but then the experience actually didn't live up to it. And VR, while the experience is great, it's hard to convey to people what it's like. We're slowly figuring our way around these things, and like you said, now with COVID, and I think also largely in part due to just the sheer amount of money Facebook has invested in creating like this next generation of VR headsets, right? Which are portable, which are small, which are easy to set up, and also invested a lot of money in creating content. Plus, people, developers and designers just becoming better at understanding what works in VR over the last 4 years. And I mean, it's like now that I think that awareness of what VR is capable of is increasing a lot, and also the number of devices out there are increasing. I think we would have been at around 4 million headsets this time last year before the Oculus Quest 1 launched, and then suddenly now we're around 15 million-ish, right? And so a lot of people are now talking more about VR and are experiencing it for themselves, and so we're seeing this resurgence in it.
I think we are over expecting out of a technology which is in a nascent stage. You told me about the numbers that the headset numbers, around 14-15 million headsets that we have. But I think that's steadily growing, and I don't think we should push it too much, because these technologies are extremely transformational. There are people who are building virtual reality worlds. And maybe in another few decades, this technology is so potential that the next generation of humans would prefer to live in virtual reality worlds because of the potential it could offer. It could offer you the opportunity to change identities. It would offer you, if you're an enterprise, to not spend in building offices. It could help you save that money. It could help you save travel. There are so many things that this technology could completely transform. So I think that we should go very easy on this technology. Mark Zuckerberg mentioned that he's working on getting 1 billion people in VR, and it's looking exciting. You said about the headsets. I think just a couple of years back, the first Oculus VR headset was including with the hardware, because it was a tethered device, including the computers and everything. It was would go to somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000. Right now, in another 4-5 years, it's come to 10x price down. Now it's come to just $300.
Yeah.
And that's
that here. Right?
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, and I think in another few years, I won't be surprised if we converge, or we stop carrying our laptops and our phones, and maybe it'll be just one single wearable device. How the transition can or might happen is anybody's guess, but I think it's a natural progression, because the way technology is growing, we are going to there is going to be a huge transition. We are going to be entering the spatial world. I know it somehow gets very difficult and overwhelming to explain that our computers or TVs or all our medium or devices have been restricted as a 2D medium. It is going to break into the 3D medium. We are getting into a world with IoT, sensors, artificial intelligence. Everything physical is going to be digitized. And we are, no matter how much I try to explain that we are going to break off barriers from the 2D world and to get into the 3D world, even or internet is going to be 3D, it's very difficult to kind of fathom or understand for a common person who's not really been invested in the space. So though these are the things which really excite me, and that's the reason I've been doing whatever I've been doing, right from Immersion VR Fest to XR Digital News Magazine, the podcast, or the XR Bazaar, because I believe that once this technology starts maturing, it will completely transform mankind. You started, you saying back in 2015. From 2015 to 2020, what have been the challenges and what are the opportunities that you see right now? And and what do you think is the problem with India's AR/VR industry? What can be done to build a cohesive, sustainable, and thriving AR/VR ecosystem here in India?
The challenges and obstacles. Okay, so kind of like, I think going back to what you brought up first regarding just the potential of what this can do, right? I think just something that I got reminded of at that point was, I think, this speech I'd seen a while back, by the Leap Motion CTO. I think he was just talking about how, so as in, when we were growing up, right? Maybe you played, and we would have played with a tennis ball or cricket ball, whatever it is. But just kind like, as children, just seeing the like, say you take a ball and you just bounce it, right? We played so much with the ball that by the time, maybe after a few months or even a few years, now someone bounces a tennis ball at you and bounces it really high, you sort of instantly, like, you're not realizing it, but you're calculating sort of that, you know how the ball bounces, how it goes up, and where it's going to land. And your brain is doing all this, so you can anticipate that sort of flight path of the ball, right? Whatever this 2D projectile motion that it's doing, or however it bounces off the ground and come. But this kind of classical mechanics, it's you have an intuitive understanding of it, so that even if I just, like, if you're looking away and I just call you and I throw a ball at you, you will almost instantly catch it. Now, what he was saying was, now say with this new generation of children who might be born in the next, like, 10 to 20 years, when VR devices become as prevalent as smartphones are today. Now you're no longer limited, like, they will be able to sort of summon whatever they want right now. And say maybe instead of playing with balls and stuff like that, you get like literal galaxies in front of you, and you collide these, or like you collide stars and things which are like, just the physics of gravitational bodies, or say quantum mechanics, like these kind of things, which are, it's difficult for me definitely to wrap my head around. I don't understand how that works intuitively. But say if those kids, when they're 2, 3, 4, they're already playing with these things, then what sort of, what the kind of potential that is left to be unlocked in mankind is what this can do. So that was just something interesting that has always, like, excite me, like a very solid use case as such, right? Of this technology. It makes something possible that we would have never imagined growing up. And so, yeah, but that is still a ways off. Talking about now, how do we get to that point, and the challenges, obstacles that we face. I think one was maybe, because people expecting a lot more from the technology. Right now, there was this whole VR hype cycle because Oculus was bought for $2 billion in 2014. Immediately, a lot of excitement around it. They launched their first device in 2016. It's great, but people were sort of expecting an iPhone type growth curve, and obviously it didn't match up to that. And so immediately the narrative changes to VR is dead, VR is terrible, VR is dead, all this nonsense. But like, there was still a very strong community, strong ecosystem, building apps and building experiences and toying around with VR and AR during the last 4 years, right? And that's a small group, but that's steadily growing. And so we can say that it definitely, I think, so the parallel I like to draw is, I think people are always comparing, like, what they're looking for is for VR to explode the way smartphones did in 2007. But that's not the case, because these are almost two entirely different, obviously these are two entirely different situations. The smartphone didn't need you to understand an entirely new, almost technological paradigm, right? People are already, it also on a more fundamental level, it didn't ask you to spend on an entirely new kind of gadget, right? You were always buying a phone. Suddenly one day Apple launched the iPhone and phones became 10x as better, right? And the GPS came and all these things, and then the whole app ecosystem behind that, you have Ubers, and eventually, I guess, like social media are coming on it, and like I mean, I don't need to get into the smartphone revolution, but we know that. But um, fundamentally, it was still people who were in the habit of buying phones, cell phones every few years. They just became so much better. That spawned a whole developer ecosystem and all the billion-dollar companies there. And we went from like the iPhone in 2007 to, I guess, in like tier 2, tier 3 towns, rural India also now everyone has a smartphone, right? In within 12, 13 years. With VR, that I don't think we can plan for that kind of a trajectory. It will. I think we need to go back to say the last time a device like this came in, which required people to understand, to sort of buy an entirely new kind of gadget. And I think what I like to take as a parallel is when the PC launched in like let's say the Apple II launched, right? I think 1980 to 82, something like that. But at that point, even though the PC launched, the price points also were very similar to the Oculus Rift, right? I think at that point, even more actually, it was around $1,000 at that point. And a similar Rift and Vive, like a first generation VR headsets, which launched in 2016, were around $800 each. But with, like you said, you need a whole computer with a gaming laptop with a big graphics card, all these kind of things. Around $1,500, $2,000 you need to spend to have VR in 2016. So PCs also were like this back in 1980. And then they didn't really become like, or say, let's take as a metric, when was the first, let's say, like $100 million company there where Adobe's and Microsoft's were building software for the PC. And that took 7 years, right? So from, I would say, first generation or second generation PCs, you took 7 years to get to that point, and then another 7-8 years for it to sort of get into every household. And maybe that's a better like metric to judge VR against. Also, a lot has changed in the world. The internet, etc., was not there. So I think we can expect VR to be a little faster than that. And obviously, because the sheer money Facebook has invested in this, we got, like you said, the Oculus Quest. In 2016, people wouldn't have expected a device like this for at least 7-8 years, right? And we got it in 3 years. In 2019, the Quest launched. In 2020, it's fallen by $100 more. It went from $400 last year to $300 this year. And it's smaller, it's more lightweight, whatever it is. But in 4 years, we've already made a lot of progress. So now going down this line, I think it's very clear that first of all, like if you're setting almost like milestones for VR, like obviously Zuckerberg has his own 1 billion people in VR, but I think that's too far off to plan for. It's more like what will these 1 billion people do in VR, right? We're not sure of. So the way I see it is, first, let's compare it to, and it's very clear right now, the best use case for VR is gaming, right? It's also like an entirely new form of gaming where you're actually in a new world. Suddenly, it's no longer games that you are playing on a smartphone or like using a mouse and keyboard for. You are actually present there. Like a sword fight in VR is literally you swinging. Your athleticism comes in, and obviously, like Beat Saber is the biggest, like, I guess, success story for a VR game, right? And not just a game, it's also, I use it for fitness. Like, it's a great exercise, and that's what during the pandemic I've been playing almost on a daily basis, right? But it's basically games where your entire body is in a game. And so at that point, immediately it becomes, fine, let's imagine this as a gaming console. How far does VR have to go? So if you look at your PS5, like your PlayStations and Xboxes, there are around 300 to 400 million of those devices out there. We are right now at around 15-20 million. So how soon will we get to those kind of numbers here? With the Quest 2, we've even got the price down to, it's at this point it's cheaper than the new generation of consoles. The PS5 and Xbox are $399, $499 each, and the Quest is already $299, right? So the only thing stopping people from buying it right now is literally you need to get your really big, your popular games, the AAA games on the platform. You need to have more must-have games on it. And so Half-Life Alyx released earlier this year, right? And that is a proper AAA game studio, Valve, releasing one of the most coveted, their most coveted IPs as a VR game. And it was, I think Half-Life 2 came out in 2004 or something like that. But 16 years down the line, they've released it in VR, and that game is it's it's I mean, a game studio who knows what they're building, who knows what this technology can do, and they put this out. I mean, obviously they've taken years to build this. Valve has been working in this space for a long time, but when that released in March, it's inspired so many more VR devs, and obviously so many more game studios to build. To port their popular franchises now into virtual reality. And so now we're seeing Ubisoft, your um, Rockstar Games, you're going to see EA, all your big game developers are going to start. But nowadays, just to create a normal game takes anywhere between 2 to 8 years. Like most of these, like GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, those games took 8 years to build with massive teams, like 500 to 1,000 people working on it. VR right now, the market is so small that companies aren't ready to commit that much to it yet, but they're starting now. And these kind of games will, I think this year now we got maybe 2 or 3 titles and only one on the scale of Half-Life Alyx. And a lot of smaller 10, 20, 30, 40% game studios building content for it. But over the next few years, you're going to see a lot more of these. Like now, Medal of Honor is coming out on the Quest very soon. And so that's going to see a lot more coming. And this portfolio, the content on the Quest is going to keep growing over the next few years. And we're going to see that exponential sort of adoption start happening. But if you take the exponential adoption again at this point, it still will take around 4 or 5 years for us to, best case scenario, for us to get to PS4, Xbox levels. But the magic of VR, of course, is that gaming is not the only use case there. The next case that you look for is productivity and just using it as a daily tool in your office, right? And there, I think, let's compare it now to like laptops. So consoles were around 300, 400 million. Laptops or computers, let's take those. That caps out at around 1 billion, right? So what can VR do for you? Like, can VR add to your everyday, it needs to become a necessity for you to work, right? And at that point, we can start aiming for like a market cap of 1 billion devices. So for that, what can VR do right now? I think you already stated it. What it can do is you no longer need to go to an office. You can just put on a headset. You're in a virtual office. Your colleagues are all around you. More fundamentally, like at a lower level, you can have as a monitor the size of a theater, right? Which is just easier to work with. Or you can have 4 or 5 monitors. Even you're like reimagining a VR OS. Why should you have a mouse and like a mouse and file explorers on a 2D where you can actually have, I don't think it's practical, but you can have like a filing cabinet where you can you can open it up and go through your files, or you can just organize inshallah they have that memory palace, right? But you can organize your information in that way maybe. So data visualization, these kind of things you can do. Obviously, like I said, with automotive, there are specific professions like automotive design or say just product design, whatever it's, right? Where it offers so much more already. So in these professions, you're going to see it adoption go. Entertainment, so for the I think for the Mandalorian, for the new Lion King movie, the entire setting and
virtual production.
sort of virtual production was done in VR, right? In a VR headset. So you're going to see. Again, as these kind of apps become more popular, people are going to start using it for work every day. And obviously, we need to get past the fact that also for you to work in your headset every day, it needs to be comfortable for you to wear it for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And right now, I think people have said right now that, so I think I read in a talk recently by by Jesse Shell, who's I think the founder of this company called Shell Games. And he said that they have a popular game on the Quest. The average session time was 106 minutes and 96 minutes. And this is a game which will immerse you completely. But even then at 96 minutes, people are feeling the strain of wearing it and then taking it up. Of course, there are a lot of people who spend 8, 10 hours already, but I think that's a very small subset. So we need to solve but yeah, the rate at which we're going, I think within a few years, we can expect that problem to be solved, the resolution, etc., to be fixed inside, so that it will be comfortable to wear through the day. And of course, right now, Facebook is the only company with a standalone headset like this. Competitors will enter within the next 4, 5, 6 years, and we'll see this place explode as a productivity device. And now, I guess the final form of VR is, so again, from gaming consoles to workforce tool to basically having it as an everyday communication device, replacing a smartphone with a VR AR device, a VR AR headset. That is the end goal, and that's something which, will we ever reach there? Is something that people can doubt. But again, you can say that if we can get to a decent form factor, and this is where you sort of get into a little conjecture, because right now we're not sure how some of these things are happening in research labs, some of these things we're just speculating on, but having sort of like a holographic phone calls, right? I call, if someone calls me, I just answer it on my headset, and you would turn up in front of me. We wouldn't be doing this via Zoom. We would be doing this with you sitting on the couch there, and us, like your hologram sitting on the couch there, and us just chatting. I think even a year ago, I might have been a little like, I wouldn't understand how this could be done, because how would we capture your hologram right now with you need to have a whole camera set up around you, and then we would have you here. And so I wasn't clear on how this might happen. But within the last year, I've started seeing ways of how this could happen. So NVIDIA released, I think, these AI libraries, which so you can create a 3D model or an avatar of yourself. That's straightforward. And then just based on, even if you're wearing just a headset or some glass, based on the way you talk and just your head movements or your those movements, just your facial movements, they can immediately estimate your entire body pose, right? And so then if you have a 3D model avatar of you using AI, they can just sort of make it translate whatever you're doing. So you don't actually need a camera to capture. So already we're seeing how this can be done, right? So yeah.
Very super exciting space, because
exactly.
So you addressed so many different things, and all so really cool, virtual reality. I bring to this, talk about this again, that it's still in this stage. The entire goal of virtual reality is to emulate of physical reality. That is the goal of virtual reality. That's the reason.
Not necessarily. I think first that, but then after that, the whole point is that in VR you're not constrained by physical.
Yes, right? Yes. No, obviously, yes. The first goal is to emulate of physical reality, right? Come to a point where it can do exactly whatever we do in a physical world, where the lines of a physical world starts blurring. Post that, who stops you from designing the world? You can design anything and everything. The only thing that could stop you is your imagination.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm excited about. You spoke about education, experiential learning. Yes, that is something which I think is going to open up in a couple of years. Or traditional rote learning has created students with blinders, and there is so many problems that the traditional industry. We could just obviously possibly sit here the whole day and talk about the wrongs which could get corrected with these technologies, which is at offer. The entire education system is that you are forced, you go to school, there is 50 or 60 students holed up in a classroom. Everybody is looking at the blackboard. There is a book that you already have. The teacher is reading that, you are getting it, and then you go back and you do the same thing over and over again. When the entire education, whatever you want, is available online, and with virtual reality, it will make it experiential. We learn only when we touch and feel things and we experience things. So virtual reality, I think, will completely redefine everything which is traditional. And it's not just your education, your healthcare, uh, your training and simulation. And I'm going to digress a bit over here and possibly get into, there is this guy called John Smart. He has this hypothesis called the Transcension Hypothesis, which I think is extremely beautiful. Now, we came into the entire human race came into existence because of two particles colliding, the Big Bang. It collided, and then this subatomic particle started expanding, and that's how the universe came into existence, right? So his hypothesis is that, instead of us going to Mars or into space or outward, with our technology, virtual reality is going to take us inwards. We are going to go back into the atoms. And that's what we're doing. We're building these virtual worlds. Facebook is building its virtual reality social VR platform called Horizon. Then there is Alt Space, there is Maiden VR, there is Improbable, there is
VR chat.
Yeah, so all of these guys are, we are at the cusp of discovering what this technology can do. And you broached a very important subject about VR gaming. I think that's going to be the big thing. Enterprises, for me, I feel that they don't get into it. So the people who get into new technology are always artists or the creative field, creative people. So that's the reason, if you see any new technology, the people who get into it first will be like the gaming guys, or because they are the ones who are brave and they get into it. Enterprise will come in later because they'll realize, oh, I can see the money now coming in. It's completely clear, and that's when I come in. So talking about enterprise, you guys have been building the future of, you said your headline on the website says building the future of enterprise VR AR. So let's talk about Autovrse. What have you guys been doing for leveraging or creating product, services, solutions for enterprises?
Yeah, so I think for around, of course, as I mentioned, we started with the automotive industry, helping automotive designers use virtual reality, right? So there are obviously, as you said, selling to enterprises is not the easiest. We had complete buy-in, like say from the end users, from automotive designers themselves. But enterprise IT teams are more risk averse, and taking a new unproven hardware from a company like Oculus or even Facebook, who they didn't know, was not something that they were very keen on doing. So, and then connecting this to their enterprise network, etc. There was significant inertia there, right? And there will be. This is something that we've always known about enterprises, especially in an industry like the automotive, a more traditional industry. So we quickly, we needed to adapt to survive. And that's what we did. So I think one place where we found an instant application of what we had already built for automotive designers was in marketing, right? And specifically in automotive configurators that their marketing teams could take directly to consumers, either at exhibitions or trade shows, and then in the actual showroom itself. So I think basically, so say the marketing heads that we met of various automotive companies, we worked with companies like Volvo, TVS Motors, etc. What they saw as soon as they put it on was a very, very realistic virtual rendition of their product, right? And then, as you said, the experiential aspect of it. Something we built for TVS Apache was you could, the Apache was obviously a more premium, almost very sporty bike, and people who built for it were like people who wanted to buy it were motorheads who were very keen to understand the actual technology in the bike, right? And so with this, we actually built an experience where they could assemble the Apache on their own and actually customize it as they build it out. And once they build out their customized Apache, they could actually take it for a virtual test drive on like the Silverstone race track that we created a simulation of. And so this was very exciting for them. So we built that for them. Likewise for Volvo, just giving showing them how the interiors looked, and being able to drive it through these like Scandinavian landscapes, right? And mostly because of working with automotive designers for so long, who have a very high bar for visual quality, we were able to give this. I mean, that same visual quality for marketers was a very big deal, and so that was immediately where we started getting our first deals in. And so then we became part of the Bosch Accelerator, and that's sort of where we began expanding out of the automotive industry. First, we just helped Bosch's team who sell, specific teams in Bosch. They're obviously the world's largest automotive supplier. They sell to automotive companies. So how their tools, how their products would fit into these cars. So we built VR sales tools around it, right? So tools which within 90 seconds, like you have maybe 90 seconds to pitch to an automotive CEO at a trade show what your product can do. And this is a very complex technical product, right? Which sits in the engine of the car. But then he puts on a headset, he's going on a test drive, some part malfunctions, and we show how their product would solve that. Within 90 seconds, their end customer has understood, okay, this is what this can do for me, right? And so, like you said, nothing can nothing can explain a concept better than you experiencing it for yourself. And so we sort of channel that for enterprise sales and marketing. The most interesting use case of this, I think, which we would have never anticipated building for when we started Autovrse, was for dishwashers, right? So Bosch, again, they have a home appliance arm, which does, they sell dishwasher, washing machines, fridges, etc. So their problem was that the Indian consumer does not fundamentally understand our dishwasher, does not trust that the dishwasher can clean their dishes, and at a different level does not fundamentally understand how it works, right? And how they've been. So basically, this was true 10, 15 years ago. The dishwasher was not very effective with cleaning the stains that we, like the masalas that we cook with, etc. But Bosch had got like an ISO certified dishwasher. Now it was actually able to do a better job than hand washing even. And it was like obviously very energy efficient, save water, all that. But it was hard to explain this to people, right? They would have at all their they would set up installments at installations at say offices, so apartment buildings, different trade shows, right? Everywhere. But what they would have would be like one display of the dishwasher sitting here with a transparent glass case and just a water supply, and it'll keep cleaning. It takes 1.5 hours to do a cycle. So when it's running the whole day, people will spend 2 minutes looking at it. They'll see clean dishes being cleaned at the end. It wasn't very effective. So what we did with virtual reality was we built, an Indian kitchen. People could come, they could pick up different dishes, they could stain it with whatever they wanted and load it into the dishwasher. And once it started running, they would actually go inside the dishwasher and see how it worked. And this was extremely successful for Bosch. They sold almost their sales jumped by around 35% the next quarter. And so they started expanding this across India. It was launched in around 22 cities. Plus, they also made a 360 video of the experience, which they put on YouTube, etc. And around 12,000 Google Cardboards they distributed it to show this. And they were seeing the benefits from it, and they kept expanding. And then it was almost like India set the example because their Asia Pacific team really liked it. And so we released versions of it in New Zealand, Australia, and in Southeast Asia, Singapore, Malaysia, and then in Germany. And then we started building for the oven, for the washing machine, etc. And so they were like great clients for us, but also it was a very interesting use case for VR. And this sort of spark helped us get another major client, IFB. Obviously, they're competitors to Bosch, but they were keen to take this event to the next level, and they wanted to put VR headsets in every IFB store across the country, and they have around 500 showrooms. So that's when we signed a deal with them to do that and roll out VR experiences for all their products, right? In 500 showrooms. And so that was, I believe, it's the largest VR retail deployment in the world. I haven't seen a bigger one. So, but as far as I know, that is the largest. That's something that we've been very proud to work on. But also, at a certain level, this was us sort of just doing services, right? For a company, we would just, for each product, we'd make a storyboard, we would develop the content, then we would deploy it for them. We were handling this from end to end as a company, from conception to even, so VR headsets are not available in India very easily. Only the HTC Vive is here. The Oculus Quest, which is obviously the device that enables deploying VR at scale because it's just this much. You don't need a computer or anything. This is not retailing in India as of now. You need to import it, right, from the US. And there is no enterprise like support or warranty given. So what we do is we buy and we resell to these companies, and we take on board the risk of servicing and maintaining this, which is significant for like a company as small as us. But that's what is needed for us to actually close these deals and take it to the end. Thankfully, we've been lucky. These devices are quite robust, so it hasn't hurt us yet. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to ask of, like say, people who are starting up in the VR space right now. You're taking on so much risk on your own. But like I said, this creating customized experiences is not a very scalable service model. Scalable model for the company, right? It is basically just doing IT services. And so we were always thinking of what can we change here. And parallelly, every company we showed this to, sales and marketing was typically where we'd enter. But once we did, people in training would ask, can we use this for training our employees, right? And that's where we started seeing, there's a lot of research about VR training and how it can help you train your employees, how it's obviously more effective. Again, it comes from the same thing, the experiential learning, right? And so, VR has been used to train, like say, Air Force pilots and in the defense and army, etc., for the last 30, 40 years, right? It's nothing new. With this like that hardware costed $1 million or more than that, like several $1 million. But it was very useful because why they spend that much money on it. Now these little devices costing $400 are capable of simulations even better than that $1 million hardware is capable of. So what that automatically means is now we can bring that quality of training to every employee out there who has a dangerous operational job. So in the energy sector, in the automotive sector, in the manufacturing sector, that's where we saw clients. So for Bosch, for TVS, and then later on for Shell, we literally built digital twins, you could say, of their production lines, so that workers could first, it would explain the concept of what they need to do on the production line, but then also they could spend as much time there learning, making mistakes, and becoming extremely confident before they go into the actual production line, right? And so that's something where we saw a huge boost in employee performance and several different metrics, reduced errors, better performance, less anxiety from the employee side, lower attrition, these kind of things. It also helps, with Shell, one of the use cases we saw was with fire response training or emergency response training, right? How would you, so basically what I like to say is VR is best used for training in dire scenarios, where dire is an acronym for dangerous, impossible, rare, and expensive. So any of these use cases, VR will help you simulate and basically train your employees in a very effective manner. And so basically sales and marketing, safety and training, we were very confident in the use cases here, but we were still making customized experiences for each solution. We were trying to find a way to make this more standardized and sort of help the marketers and the trainers themselves modify the content that we deliver in VR for them, right? And so I think over the last 1 year, over the course of 2019, we made a conscious decision to do fewer services deals and invest on building something that would help people basically help our clients edit these experiences for them. So we partnered with a company in Italy called Autovrse, who gave us all the enterprise side stuff like the enterprise security, logins. The stuff that you need to sell an enterprise-ready software. And we basically, for Ivy, we built out a web portal where their marketers could change the messaging. And in partnership with Autovrse for training as well, we built a tool where, we were selling a tool where they could basically with a no-code kind of platform, they would be able to um, create, like we would make a 3D simulation of the space, but in the exact instructions that we need to make, the trainers themselves could make by just creating like a flow chart of sorts in this editor, right? And so that's been kind of the product which is now enabling scale with all these companies and helping them deploy VR at scale. And that's how we are. That's over the. I mean, we were on the verge of closing some really big deals on the basis of this product. Pandemic hit, so for 3-4 months, enterprises just weren't buying anymore. But yeah, slowly recovering. With Ultratech, recently we announced a deal with them where they are adopting this for field service and inspection, this kind of a tool. And I mean, I'm not at liberty to share right now, but like there are a few more pretty large scale enterprises who are going to be using this tool in the near future to train their employees.
Lovely,
Right?
lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So,
Super,
yeah,
super. Yeah. So we wish you the very best. That IFP, you said 500 VR headsets were deployed in the showroom. How cool is that? So it's really, really cool. You spoke about headsets being the problem over here in India. So I have a startup called XR and I'm trying to kind of solve that problem because here in India, these retailers on Amazon, the headset which is around $300 or $400, they sell it for double or sometimes even more than that price. So yeah, we are trying to solve that problem. I've tied up with a couple of brands, such as Pimax, a couple of Indian VR headset, XR, and I'm also having conversations with Facebook, and hopefully in the coming years, we would like to kind of solve that problem, and bring all of these devices which could create transformation and yes, I mean, solve that problem because, and not have people who are just conning because the industry will not grow if you are selling these devices which should be there at healthcare, education, enterprises, and if the retailers are selling for more than double or triple the price, this is not going to solve the adoption problem. So I'm trying to solve that, and I think that definitely no code in the future. So we wish you the very best. So last question, and I'm gonna bunch up a couple of things into it because we're running.
I think we already discussed.
You're running out of time. So what would be your advice to entrepreneurs who are keen to build the AR VR startup? Because I'm sure you must have had quite a lot of learnings from building an AR VR startup. That's the first question. And the second question, the future of AR VR MR. How does it excite you, and what is the roadmap for Autovrse?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I think about so for like this advice for entrepreneurs or anyone who might be starting up in this space is, so right now there's the space itself, like just getting a fundamental understanding of what all is in this space is going to be a little, at least slightly intimidating, I think, because like you said, now there are 360-degree videos which are captured with these camera setups, etc. And obviously they have their own use cases. Like you see Walmart using it for training employees for cases like, just a customer coming in and being nasty. Or even I think in the US they have something like if a gunman enters your store and tries to rob you. So 360-degree video is very effective for these kind of things, and also for in terms of news coverage and documentaries, right? It's a very effective tool because it actually puts you more, like immerses you in that topic and helps you understand and understand these like whatever the point of the documentary might be more thoroughly. So that's one thing which gets clubbed under VR, but that's how that works. Then you have, like I said, gaming, right? So with gaming, usually when people start up, they are like the goal is obviously, and I think our whole startup, all the startup gurus and advice that you have is all about like scale fast, move fast, and break things. These kind of this is mostly the motto, right? It's like high risk, high reward kind of situation. right now gaming is probably the only place where you're going to get that kind of growth, because in order to get that crazy scale, you need to have the ecosystem at a certain level, right?
Right.
And because Facebook has invested a lot in building a gaming ecosystem, and parallelly even Steam and Valve and with Half-Life Alyx itself, they've invested in gaming, and all the early work that is like basically the VR gaming ecosystem is the most developed of all applications in VR. That's where you're going to see stratospheric growth. So if that is what you want, then at this if that's why you want to start up in this space is crazy growth, then that like you need to be building a game, right? Then you get to enterprise side, and maybe it's training, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's productivity, maybe it's communication, maybe it's like VR conferencing. There are lots of applications down that road. But yeah, when you are selling to enterprises, there is always going to be a limit again to your scale, and enterprises are naturally like just slow. I mean, especially your largest clients. B2B is going to take time, and you need to be ready to invest in like in solving a problem, not just solving a problem, but also in salesmen and people who can actually get you in touch with the right stakeholders and convince them into adopting your product, right? And right now, there is no VR company who has on the B2B side who maybe has a higher than $100 million valuation. Maybe one at most, but it's not easy at all, right? So you need to be prepared for at least at minimum 5 to 10 year commitment to make that work. It could happen sooner, but I'm saying you should mentally prepare yourself for that. But overall, yeah, I think it's more of a VR has I think a lot of people have approached me asking me for advice and from what we've done in this space. And my first thing would be I think it's just generic advice for any entrepreneur, not just in the VR spaces. Understand what you want to do and what drives you, and be prepared for a significant commitment of time, for 4 or 5 years at the very least, I would think. And in this space, especially, you need to see the ecosystem develop for you to achieve that crazy scale. So be patient, right? And be very aware of these limitations before you dive in. I think what excites me the most personally would be so obviously right now the use case everyone's talking about is remote work, but I think more than that, just sort of hanging out with people in across the world immediately, right? That is something which I think would be very, very exciting. I mean, growing up, I had a lot of family or friends move away, right? They would, and obviously when you're growing up in the 90s or the 2000s, if someone moves away, then you've basically just lost all contact with them. Obviously now you reestablish contact with Facebook and stuff, but with once VR becomes ubiquitous and everywhere, that sort of won't matter anymore, right? And as a consequence, it's much easier to spend time with the people you love, etc. But also another thing I think is that all of a sudden the people who you get in contact with are no longer limited. You're no longer limited by distance, and so I think we're already seeing this happen with the internet, where someone who might be in a random corner of the world who has very niche interests, they can just go on to Twitter or Reddit and find a random community who has as obsessive an interest about that niche topic. And till so far you're limited to interacting with them via comments and a little forum. And already that feels so engaging. And I'm sure everyone here spends so much time on social media in general, right? But now all of a sudden imagine that instead of a more this more destructive way of interacting with these communities via a tiny phone, limited by just sending texts, you can hang out with them in a virtual play space and engage with them. And when you're interacting with them in this kind of way, the kind of ideas that will unlock, the kind of, I mean, basically the internet has helped us work together so much more efficiently. I think once VR reaches that point, it's going to unlock even more I guess human potential, if you want to call it that. That's kind of what excites me the most about this.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you, Ashwin. It was a pleasure to talk to you, understand your insights. I can feel your passion. I think you're one of the startups in a few years' time. You guys have achieved quite some major things in a very short time. I wish you the very best. Keep on doing what you're doing. And I think I really hope and I wish that the ecosystem comes together. And that's what I have been doing. And I think that's my role as an evangelist here in India, to get the investors, to get the government, get the marketeers, get the technologists, everybody under one platform, because this is inevitable.
Yeah.
Augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, all of these technologies inevitable. It's coming, and it's coming very, very fast. We as humans, we as individuals, we as enterprises, we as institutions, we as governments, we need to come together and understand that these technologies are going to play a huge, major role in human evolution, in a personal life, in a businesses. And this is the right time. COVID has possibly accelerated and got the right eyeballs or the attention on digital technology, which it actually deserves and which has been ignored for the longest time. I hope that people come together and understand that. You said something very profound. So far, with social media, we are getting possibly destructive with the comments, the nasty comments, and things like that. Maybe virtual reality will be able to create a global world where geography will be history, where, like you pointed out in your conversation earlier, that there'll be holographic avatars where we could be sitting in our own possible world, but our world could be designed or imagined to our preference. We could have possibly thousands of people or friends from around the world sitting together in that virtual space, maybe interacting, maybe learning, maybe doing business. And I wish that whatever we do, I hope that we create a better future, better world where we take this tool and create something, that helps everyone. Because so far, technology is a double-edged sword, and if it's in a hand of few, it can be used for a destructive purpose and to possibly even create a surveillance society. The only way we can create a better world is when the common people and everybody comes together, and not, have it held by just the government or the small set of people or the billionaires rule you. So today,
I
because
think that equity of opportunity is mostly what it should enable. Like right now, if you're starting a company in, say, San Francisco, you're at a much bigger advantage than someone starting a company in Bangalore, who is still at a much bigger advantage than someone starting a company in a tier 2 or tier 3 town, right? Like we still we've gotten to this spot 4 years down the line, because the people that we have met, mostly in Bangalore, at these at bigger companies who have turned into our clients, have all believed in us and have sort of bought into that Bangalore startup ecosystem, right? And that's helped us so much get to this point. Someone with the same resources and the same, who might have started up in a different location than me in India, would not have been fortunate enough to get this. And so, ideally, with VR, these kind of barriers won't exist anymore. Already, I can feel it with, like, say, it's been possible for me to attend conferences in SF and Vancouver, etc., by just putting on a VR headset and then actually go and network with people there, which has led to certain opportunities that I don't think would have ever been possible before. And that's basically, and again, right, like, why do the best universities and the best education have to be limited to the people who have the resources maybe to travel to those places? Already there, by just putting these talks online, we're helping, but putting talks online, putting lectures online is a certain level, but actually being in a classroom, interacting with your peers, interacting with your teacher, that is what VR can do. It can actually bring bring more of that experience directly to you, even if you're in some obscure like village anywhere in the world, right?
Lovely. Yeah, so that's what excites me, and I hope that we leverage this tool and India is such a great country. You said the rural area. I mean, there is we still have a large population which is still not educated. Maybe VR, maybe internet, maybe 5G could solve the problem. In that note, I mean, I really hope and I pray that we have these technologies coming in, creating a better world. To my listeners, if you like what you see and hear, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you, Ashwin. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks a lot, Eddie. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is great. Thanks a lot.